Just checking everything, checking the connections. And usually there's a little bit of a delay when I go live, so usually the first 20 seconds is kind of cut off. But since we are live now, I may as well start. My name is Apter. I'm a drummer, musician, producer, songwriter, cat owner here in Nashville, Tennessee. And every Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Central Time, I do a little chat because a lot of my live streams when I'm playing, I can't answer the questions and I can't always get to the comments in my other videos during the week. So I like to do that during this week or during Sundays. I like to give about 30 minutes of my time and really just connect with my audience. And I never want to say fans at all because really I view this as kind of everyone coming along this journey with me. And everyone who's watching is my peers because you're just like me, I'm just like you. I'm just a musician trying to make it just like everybody else, and I just happen to live in Nashville, which is Music City, USA. And I kind of restarted my career here in Nashville about 2 years ago, and just been documenting kind of the ups and downs of a music career when you're restarting it in your adult life. So yeah, it's the holidays. We are getting near the end of the year, near everyone kind of take this time to maybe reflect and make New Year's resolutions that they may or may not keep for the next year. I know that when I started off this year as a musician, I committed to this being the best year of my career. And I started a video series. I didn't exactly follow through with it, but pretty much I've stayed on that theme for the whole year. And to answer your question, Chris, yes, I'm a drummer. As you can see right behind me, you can see these are some of the tools I use, but you can also see me play live. I try to stream at least one live gig a week. I'm usually playing every day of the week here in Nashville. Streaming live costs money, takes energy, but if you want to see me play live, you can look at any of the previous live videos on my channel. I think I have about 600. And I also just kind of really talk about what it's like being a musician here in Nashville and kind of navigating that whole scene. And as we've progressed later in the year, I've kind of progressed to different things in my career. I've been doing a little bit more songwriting, doing more producing. I'm getting into the business of music in the sense of I'm starting to sell songs. I'm starting to get songs licensed. And I'm kind of getting all into that exploration. And that's what I think I'm going to be starting doing some videos on in the coming year. But looking back on this previous year, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap a little bit later this week. But I want to ask everyone out there, and I want you to put in your comments, put in the comments, how did this year turn out for you? Did you feel like you've accomplished everything you wanted? Did you feel like you've came up short? What are you looking at for the new year? And I think it's really good to reflect. And that's something I do not just at the end of the year, but I try and do that on a daily basis. I try to make time to journal and think, what am I trying to do with my career? Where am I trying to go? And I talk about these things a lot in Nashville because people say, I want to come to Nashville. What do I need to know? And I ask them, well, what are you trying to accomplish in Nashville? Why are you coming to Nashville? And why do you want to be here versus where you're normally at? So I want to, what do you think your goals are? Sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked right there. I got a little cat running around right now. So I often tell people, like, what are you aiming for in your music career? So some people, they just want to play live. And I'm saying, well, you can play live in any city. You can play live in Nashville, and I play live every day here. And if you look on Lower Broadway, that's a huge live music scene, literally 60 stages going 24 hours a day. Not 24 hours a day, probably about 18 hours a day. But just playing live, I often ask people, like, well, do you just want to stay in town? Do you want to travel? Do you want to play on big stages? Do you want to do an arena tour? Do you want to do recording? Because all those things are very, like, you have to intentionally set your goals. And I have some people say, well, I want to come and maybe I'll be a studio musician. I say, okay, that's great. Well, what do you plan on, what are you aiming for with that studio music? How are you going to get in there? And a lot of people have kind of a vague, nebulous idea of what they want to accomplish, but they have no idea what a specific thing is, like a quantifiable number, a certain goal they want to attain. So that's one thing I often reflect on. And a big part of what my goal is as a musician here in Nashville, and you can see that the music industry is really changing a lot lately. And one thing I found out this year is that I don't want to have all my eggs in one basket. I want to kind of diversify my income streams, diversify my skills, diversify my career. And I've had a couple great opportunities, and then I've also had some things kind of fall through. And really not putting all your chips onto one horse, but having various streams of income. So, for example, my primary stream of income is, you guessed it, I play drums. Uh, but I've been writing songs. I've also been doing content online. I've been teaching online. I'm, I've been, yeah, selling digital products in various ways. And this upcoming year, I'm looking to branch out into that. And why I kind of want to do that is because when you're a side musician like myself, let's say you're with a touring group, let's say somebody hires you and you go on tour, that's not a full-time position. That might be full-time for a few months, and then what's the next gig? Or let's say you're touring and the tour suddenly stops, or you get fired. And I've seen some really great musicians get fired, and it happens to everybody. Like, that's one thing I want you to think about, regardless if you're in Nashville or somewhere else. Everybody gets fired at some point. It happens to everybody. And I've thought about things like that. And, like, for example, last year I was on a tour and I decided to leave that tour halfway through because myself and the camp were just not aligned in the vision. Some things that were promised weren't followed through upon. And I left that tour and I was left with nothing. And so one of the things I've set out to do in the past year is kind of start making a name for myself as an individual. So having a YouTube channel, making content daily, streaming my live shows, but then also doing some, like, selling some digital products on my website. Some passive income that can keep me afloat during lean times. And you can see right now here in Nashville, this is when slow season starts, and this is when everyone starts begging for gigs. And I kind of wanted to have some things kind of that were keeping me afloat, or things where, you know what, maybe I don't want to go out and play 12 hours straight, because I've done that quite a bit this year and I love it, but it's exhausting. So this past year, I've really focused on laying down the groundwork for some other income coming through passively. And I would suggest a lot of musicians look at doing that and realize that it's not going to happen overnight. It's really like a long, slow grind. For example, I've been doing YouTube. I started doing it regularly in March of 2023, and I thought I was going to be making money off of it. I thought I was going to blow up. I thought I was going to be an influencer. And I quickly realized it was much more difficult than I thought. And for that first year, I think I had maybe like 200 followers at the end of the year. And I was pretty much posting every day. At the end of my second year, I'm going to be at about 3,000, which is pretty big. That's a tenfold growth from that first year. And that took a long time. And that took about a year of just grinding it out and trying to find my stride. And I'm still trying to find that. And in terms of money I've generated from YouTube, I think this year I've just started generating a little bit of money from advertisement. I think I maybe have generated $1,000, maybe. And that's with putting in a lot of work. The return of money is not worth the time I've invested so far. But I view this as it's a long project. And this is also doing YouTube again, has given me a little bit of a bigger audience, a little bit of a bigger name. I just have to realize I need to spend about an hour on this a day, and it's going to take about 2 to 3 years for it to pay off. And I really encourage other musicians to start thinking about what are some things that you can do that are still involved with music, that still are supporting your musical career, but that can also give you another avenue for finances. So maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you want to teach online. that would be a great thing to start thinking about. Maybe you want to license some of your songs. So I've started building up a library of my songs that I put in my YouTube videos. So I put the background music and I've already put them, those songs, I've already registered them and they are published. And so now they get money anytime they are played. And if I put them in my YouTube videos, if I put them in my reels, uh, it just adds more money. Let me. I'm seeing some quick questions coming in. We have Chris Watkins asked me what encouraged me to be a drummer. Um, that's a good question, Chris. Uh, so my stepfather was a musician. He is a musician, and I grew up listening to music. Um, and I think I've always said that music is a language. And some people are really talented at languages and speaking languages and can pick them up quickly. Some people, maybe they're not quite as talented, but they happen to grow up in a bilingual household, so they speak multiple languages. And I would say that's me. I was never technically talented, but I listened to a lot of music. And I'm not sure why it was drums. I think maybe drums was just immediately accessible to me. Like I could sit down and play and make noise, or I think maybe my stepdad's friend was teaching drums and she needed students and needed some money, so he decided to help her out and sent me to her. And so I started playing when I was really young. Yeah, and I pretty much played my whole life. And I came from more of a background of listening to music and really being into music as opposed to really being into drums. So every time I sat down and played drums, I even think like I'm almost like a producer. I'm not thinking about doing chops, fills. I'm not thinking about showing off. I'm thinking about what are the ways that I can guide the listener through this song. I may not have written the song, just like a museum curator may not have done the art, but you can kind of dictate the energy flow of what you're taking people through. And that's kind of what I do as a drummer. And that's one of the things I think that keeps me working as a drummer, is that I'm thinking about it more in terms of overall song, more of musical structure. And then also one of the things that I've kind of discovered in the past couple of years is that it's very much a relationship business, a personality business. So if you're a C plus drummer and an A plus person, you are always going to work. If you are an A plus drummer and a C plus person, you may not have quite as many options. Yeah. And so we got somebody, so Dylan says, my 14-year-old son's a fantastic drummer. School teachers, uh, yeah, school teachers kept complaining about him tapping. Yep, that was me as well. And that still is me. I'm always tapping. Yeah, it's funny. I think that drums and rhythm are a really common tie between a lot of musics, and you really think that drums are really the heartbeat of the song. Like really, like think about BPMs and think about heart rates. I always tell people like kind of align those. So if your heart rate's about 50 when you're resting, it's going to be a really slow, or if the tune is 50 BPMs, really slow, chill feel. Yeah. So, but back to what I was talking about in terms of just like career and overall picture. Um, so much of what I've learned in the past couple years, especially in the past year, is that being a musician, being a drummer, being successful at it is not about being good at music, not about being good at drums. It's about being adequate enough. It's about being sufficient. It's about being a good person, developing relationships, and putting yourself out there. You could be the greatest musician in the world. You could be the greatest drummer in the world, but no one's just going to stumble upon you. No one's going to discover you. Like you really have to build a network and intentionally do that. And sometimes in order to build a network, you have to play with people that maybe aren't playing the style of music you want, maybe aren't at your musical level in terms of skill, maybe aren't the type of people you want to hang around with, maybe you're taking gigs that don't pay you well. And I've done all that when I got to Nashville. My first year of playing, I said yes to everything. If I wasn't doing anything and someone wanted a gig, I said yes. Didn't matter if it didn't pay well, didn't matter if it was bad music, bad people. I knew that during my first year in town, I was going to have to really build a network. And that's something I always encourage people to do, is like intentionally build your network. You need to have skills, and most of us have skills, but we need to really focus on developing a network so people can call you for gigs. Uh, and that's one of the things I never really focused on when I was younger. I just focused on being a great musician. And if someone didn't show up to a gig prepared, I would chew their ass out. Was I right? Maybe I was right that they weren't prepared and they should have been prepared, but was chewing their ass out helping me? No. It's really a relationship business. And that's kind of one of the things that I've really focused on, is building relationships and focusing on things outside of drums, outside of my instrument, even outside of music. Because the music business, man, it's like 90% business and 10% music. And none of us got into the music business to be a business person. None of us got into it to be a content creator. None of us got into it to push papers. And none of us got into it to make money. I got into music because I love it. And in order for me to make my living playing music, I have to think about some things in terms of money, in terms of business, in terms of relationships. It's simply not enough to be good at your instruments. And even now, it's not enough just to like crank out good material and have a good network. I tell people you need to be having some content, doing that in the regular, having like thinking about managing your finances, thinking about literally running a business, thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur. I like to tell other musicians, think about yourself as your own record label, meaning that you have to create the content, you have to produce it, oftentimes you have to record, engineer, mix it, then you have to distribute it, then you have to market it, and you have to like build those relationships, and then you have to find ways to maybe get money off of it or get some exposure off of it. It really is just like a nonstop grind. And so just showing up and playing is not enough anymore. Uh, we have Dylan who says he just subscribed. Thank you, Dylan. And so I wanted to know, like, if anybody has any questions, shoot them over here. You never knew who may see you on YouTube, and next thing you know, well, never know who is watching. That's correct. I would say, who commented on that? That is Matico. And yeah, I would say, yeah, there's always, if you don't play, if you don't put yourself out there, no one's going to discover you. Now, you might say, well, I don't want to start doing YouTube. I don't want to start doing TikTok because all those things have passed me by and no one's going to watch. And you're probably right. For like the first few steps into whatever you're trying to do to get yourself out there and exposed, no one's going to be watching. But if you kind of gradually build your platform, like I've gradually built my YouTube platform over the past year, you gradually bring in more and more people. And I had a few videos kind of take off this year. And they took off, and I would like in a day or two, I would get like an extra few hundred subscribers. And that was great for me because I also had this backlog of material that I've done for like the past year. And so things just kind of exponentially started taking off. And I think your musical career can be very much like that. You're just planting seeds in all these different places with other musicians, trying to build relationships and friendships with, other studios, other touring camps, even other companies. Like I've started working with a few music companies right now. It really is all just like a relationship business. And so I got a few more questions here. Let me answer these. Am I from America? Yes, from America. I live in Nashville right now. I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh, but I spent time in Chicago primarily, but I was also in Ohio. It's also back and forth between New York, Toronto, a lot of different places. How do you make yourself an artist? Like, do you have to fill out any papers? I'm not quite sure what you mean by an artist if you have to fill out any papers. I mean, I register a lot of my songs through BMI or ASCAP, whatever your performing rights organization is. And if you're not sure about that, let me know, because I'm thinking about doing a video between performing rights organizations getting your music licensed. But there's a lot of different ways you can get your music placed into things. You can have And very much like music licensing, so it's another topic, but music licensing, people are like, how do I get my music in front of the right people? I would say the easiest way to think about that is just like being a musician. How do you get in front of the right people to play your music, to get into a band? You have to build connections, you have to build relationships. So you can be a great musician, but if no one knows who you are and you have no network, that's not going to do you any good. Same with songwriting. So connect with other songwriters, connect with other publishers, find people who are in the business. And Nashville is a great place for that. Okay, and we have Vernon. Vernon, you are, we're going to take you off this channel because we don't tolerate that. And for those, yeah, so yeah, Vernon, no thank you. Just to let you know, everybody here, so like, welcome everybody here. I don't care where you're from, what country, what your religion is, what your race, sex, any of that. So yeah, no thank you, Vernon. We have, so Dylan was also curious about, let me see, what drummers influenced me. I would say drumming for me is always like, Ringo's always my favorite drummer, still is. Is he the greatest drummer in the world? Well, it depends on how you define it. Technically, no. And he knows that, but man, Ringo, when he sat down and played, you knew it was Ringo. And Ringo helped create songs that connected to a whole generation and like really defined a culture. And if you put like Neil Peart into the Beatles, Neil Peart's great drummer from Rush, another drumming legend, I don't think it would work. And that's one of the great things I love about music is that you don't need to be the best. You just need to be the most unique version of you. And Ringo was very comfortable with who he was and how he played. And yeah, Ringo's always been one of my favorites. Stuart Copeland as well. Guys like Questlove. But a lot of my influences as a drummer just come from non-drummers, like people like Prince, people like the Beatles. I really have just always loved music, and I would encourage any drummer out there to listen to a lot of music and pay attention to everything but the drums. Really pick apart what the bassist is doing. Like Tony Levin's probably one of my favorite bassists. Play with Peter Gabriel. Played with King Crimson. But also, I always encourage other musicians, especially drummers, learn other instruments. It just pays off so well. So curious if we have any other questions, because one of the things I'm going to be doing moving forward is I'm going to take a couple weeks off from doing the live chat, and I'm going to be focusing on doing more interviews with guests, because I've talked enough on this channel. I want to start bringing other people that I work with, having other people share their stories about what worked for them and what are the lessons they've learned along the way. And because I think it's really important for me to connect with my fellow musicians, but I also want to give my fellow musicians a platform, give them some exposure, give them some shine. And that's another thing like I recommend to all musicians. Like, success is always better when it's shared. It's always better when you take people along with you. And conversely, I tell people, if you want to be successful, you need to root for other people's success. You need to cheer other people on. And when I was younger, I felt a lot of resentment when people achieved things I didn't think that they deserved. And I would be at a show and I'm like, I can play better than that guy. Why does he have that gig? And what I failed to realize is that that person went to all those rehearsals. He may have done some things he didn't want to do. She may have really, for lack of better terms, eaten a plate of caca to just keep the ship moving. It's all about like finding people that you can work with, finding people that you can be comfortable with, and it's like a give and take. And a lot of times I wasn't doing the give and take. It was like my way or the highway, and that didn't serve me. So I always encourage other musicians, play with musicians that you're not jealous of, that you want to support, that you cheer on their success, and find other musicians who cheer on your success. Because one of the things I found out this year as well is that if you achieve any level of success, And I'm not so delusional to think I've achieved any level of success. But I'm starting to like get a name in terms of doing content. I'm starting to, more and more people are starting to know me, and it's not that much, but it's just a little bit. And I found out that some people reacted very negatively and judgmentally and harshly. And one of the things I just sit down and think about it, and had nothing to do with me, but it had everything to do with usually those people's insecurities. And previously, I had a lot of insecurity, and I still do, but I let my insecurity drive me when I was younger, and that made me resentful of other people. And that's one of the things I've also been working on this past year, is really working on my sense of self, working on just being comfortable with myself and insecurity that's kind of plagued me throughout my career. And again, that's a personal thing, but yeah, personality is a big part of the music business. So that's something they don't teach you in music school. They don't teach you how to get along well with other people, how to be diplomatic, the political aspect. And it's a very political business because music is not a meritocracy. Nothing in this world is. So I was curious if anybody had any questions at all, because I'd love to answer a few more questions before I hop off, because I have quite a few big projects that I'm undertaking right now. And this next year is going to be pretty exciting. I have lots of videos on the slate ready to come out. And I've kind of taken a break during the holiday season when there's not a lot of people online. And then starting in the new year, that's when things are going to hit. Um, but if we don't have any questions, I'm just going to sign off here. And if you've watched this far, thank you so much for coming along this journey. Always shoot me an email if you have any questions, if there's anything I can do to yeah, if there's anything I could do to help you out, or if there's any questions you have about coming to Nashville, or if you want to stop by a gig. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Everyone have a great Sunday and a Happy New Year.